Hello everybody, this is another edition of the Institute. I am Mr. Hinnon, and I'm going to take a look at the idea that thermal expansion with materials that have a hole in them actually do something that is kind of unusual. So I have a Bunsen burner going down here. You probably can't see that flame real well, but it is actually heating up. So I'm going to try to stay as safe as possible. That's why I'm goggled up. And what I have here is I have two materials. One has a brass sphere at the end of it, and the other one is actually made out of the same material, but it's actually a brass ring. So they've designed these that the sphere will just barely fit through that. So if I try to take this sphere and pass it through that hole, it'll actually fit. Now, if I take this sphere and I put it into the flame down here, one of the questions is, well, what exactly is going to happen? Well, if I'm putting it into the flame, it should heat up. And so if it's heating up, I would expect that it would expand, and then all of a sudden it won't fit anymore into this ring. And sure enough, that should be the case. So I'm going to heat this up for a little bit so you can kind of see that happening. And so as I try to pass it through there, it won't actually pass through this setup. Now, one way to kind of show that, I'm going to do this a little bit differently, so hopefully you'll kind of see this, is what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the ring, I'm going to have it pass through the bottom of this. I want to kind of show that if I hold it like this, it doesn't actually fit through there anymore. So it's not going to actually work. So how am I going to get this sphere to actually go through there again? So what I have here, I'm going to turn this just slightly, is I have my sink going. So I'm going to turn on the water of this sink, and so I'm going to put it into the water. So if we put it into the water, that's going to be colder. That should actually cause this to cool down. And if I watch that, see that steam? Sure enough, it popped right through. So it went through that setup when I actually had that happen. So now it can fit through there again. I can't actually set it on here. It won't actually stay if I try to set it on there. Now, my next question is, if I put this back into the flame, bring my flame back over here, and I heat it back up, we know we're going to get that sphere to contract, or not contract, it's going to expand when it's in the flame. It contracted when it was in the cold water. And so we should get that same situation as I heat it up. It should get to a point where it doesn't actually fit through the sphere anymore, or fit through the ring anymore because the sphere is too big. One of the questions though, is there anything else I can do to this ring to make it so that it'll fit through the sphere? So I'm going to heat this up for a little bit. Just kind of show that now it won't fit through there again. So I'm going to pass it like I did before. Sure enough, it sits on there, so it's not going to actually pass through. And one of the things that our book kind of pointed out is if you have some material with a hole in the center and you heat that up, one of the questions is what exactly is going to happen to the hole? Does the hole get smaller when you heat it up? Does it get bigger when you heat it up? Or does it stay the same size because it's expanding, the material is expanding, but it's also expanding into it, so it expands in both directions. So what is your think? If you actually heat this ring up, what do you think is going to happen to the hole through the center? Does the hole get bigger? Does the hole get smaller? Or does it stay the exact same size? So right now I have this sphere has been heated up, so it doesn't actually fit through there. I'm going to keep it kind of in the fire, but what I'm going to do, so it stays kind of warm, is I'm actually going to put the ring more directly into the fire. So I'm going to heat it up more. I'm putting the sphere up here just so you know that it's staying kind of warm, so it's not cooling off at all. So I'm trying to keep them both. So now what I'm doing is I'm actually heating the ring. So if the ring were to stay the same size, I think what we should see is that the sphere still doesn't fit. If the ring is actually getting bigger, then we should actually see that the sphere will now fit through it, because it fit through it before. The other idea is if it actually got smaller. That one's going to be hard. We don't actually have a good way of testing that right away, but I'm going to show you a way that we'll actually test it in just a moment. So now what I've got is I've got both the ring and the sphere have been heated up. So they're both nice and warm here. And we're going to see if I pass that through there. Whoops. Pass that through there, whether it will fit. And sure enough, what I find is it actually fits through there now. Almost like it was at the beginning. So when they're both heated up, it still passes through there. Now I'm going to cool them both down. So put them in the water, cool them both down. So they're now both nice and cool. Ring's starting to untwist out of there. So they're now nice and cool to the touch. So I can touch either one of them. And one of my question is, so right now the sphere will pass through there. What happens if I don't heat up this, but I do heat up this? Well, there's no good way to kind of see what exactly is happening, except that if I heat this and the ring were to get smaller, all of a sudden what you should find is it shouldn't actually fit. So now I'm going to test that this, we saw that it either expanded or it stayed exactly the same. What we're going to actually test and show is that we actually had this thing expand. So if it actually got smaller, then you should have actually found that it wouldn't have fit. So if I heat up the ring, so we're heating up just the ring now, we're going to see what happens. What I notice is now when I try to pass it through there, it actually seems to fit even better. So this ring must have actually gotten bigger, or it stayed the same. But we saw that it couldn't have stayed the same, because if it stayed the same, then when I heated up both of them, or when I heated up this one, it wouldn't have actually expanded so it could fit. So what it's telling me is that when you heat up a ring of material, that the inside of it will expand just like it's made out of a solid material. So we see that happening with our nice little setup. So I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Hinstitute, and I look forward to more of them as we continue with our study in thermodynamics.